If you're struggling on Insane mode, then this is the video for you. I'm going to give you the best build to use in Castle Crashers for Insane mode. Now before we get into the build, there is one mechanic you need to learn first, that being juggling. Now I've already made a video on this, so I won't be covering it in this video, but with that being said, let's begin with the character. Now it's widely agreed upon that the Fencer and Industrialist are the best characters in Castle Crashers, but despite this, we are not going to be picking them for Insane mode. That's due to the fact that the regular enemies are the hardest part for Insane mode, not the bosses. So we're going to want to choose a character that has great crowd control, that being Grey Knight. Wait, that's not right. So Blue Knight has the ability to freeze enemies in the game. This can be done with splash magic, throwable magic, jump magic, and even elemental infusion, something that is insanely OP against beefies. This even works on small boss fights, such as the Groom, who is one of the hardest boss fights in Insane mode. But with Blue Knight, it makes this fight trivial. And for the larger boss fights, you're going to want to be meleeing them, since at level 50, you unlock the Divine Spin combo. Using this on large boss fights can melt their health bar, completely disregarding the need for sword blade magic. Of course, you are going into Insane mode on a high level character, right? Right. With our character picked, let's move on to the weapons. So for Insane mode, there are two weapons I'm going to recommend, with the first one being the Bear Club. This is the weapon you'll use for 90% of the game. Now I know what you're thinking, where's the crit?
Where's the crit wrecker?
But before you press that dislike button, let me explain why you don't need crits. So some weapons in the game will have a random crit chance. This ranges from 1 to 5%. Depending on the weapon you choose. I don't think it's worth it to trade guaranteed damage and defense for a chance of extra damage. For example, the Bear Club will give you plus 5 damage to every enemy you hit, compared to something like the dual prong sword, which will only give you plus 3. But the dual prong sword has a 1% chance of critting an enemy. This means you are trading a guarantee of 2 damage from every enemy for a 1% chance of more damage, which for me isn't really worth it. But the second reason is all more important, since crits can only be done to a single enemy at one time, which isn't great if you were trying to damage 5 enemies at once. That's why having a higher strength weapon is actually better, since you could kill all the enemies at the same time. But with all that being said, crits are not entirely useless, and this is where we use our second weapon. So the other weapon I would recommend is the Man Catcher. So it would look something like this. For any level that is mostly enemies, I would use the Bear Club. Having plus 5 strength and plus 5 defense, the Bear Club delivers high consistent damage as well as great survivability. For any level that has a boss checkpoint, I would use the Man Catcher. These are for bosses such as the Barbarian, Corn Boss, and Frost King, since for these fights, you're going to be targeting one enemy, making the random crit chance actually useful. So with the character and weapon selected, let's move on to the pet nursery. Now there are a handful of pets you can use throughout the run, but the main one you'll stick to will be Hawkster. Hawkster will bring you through on enemies you defeat, providing you constant healing throughout entire levels. This is especially useful for levels with boss fights at the end, since you can save your healing potions for that moment. Hawkster will also attack any enemies you knock over, although it's not that much. Now there are some scenarios that I would switch out Hawkster, that once again being boss checkpoints. So instead of Hawkster, I would either use Snoot or Bipolar Bear. Snoot gives you a plus 4 to your strength, increasing your raw damage, whereas Bipolar Bear will defeat any enemy that has 8% or less health. This can be extremely useful on bosses with final phases, such as the Frost King or Corn Boss, essentially allowing you to skip these phases, which is highly recommended. Now there is one more pet that I would recommend, but only for the Necromancer, that being Piggy. Piggy will increase the amount of health you get from food, something really useful on Necromancer since all the enemies drop guaranteed healing, and for the Necromancer fight, you're gonna need healing. And that's my overall build I would use to beat Insane Mode. If this video was helpful to you, then a like and subscribe would be highly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.